You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. I'm Chris Davis, your host.
I'm sleeping underneath the evening sky. I'm dreaming of a place far from now.
Scott Albert Johnson is an unusual find in central Mississippi. His themes are not the typical here in this part of the state or in this part of the country. But he's a singer-songwriter and musician of rare caliber, and he joins us for a while now to talk about his new single and his journey in the music world and music business. Scott Albert Johnson, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this or not, but I find it kind of unusual to have this kind of music coming from someone who lives in Jackson, Mississippi. It's, to me, a kind of ethereal music. Your themes, the sound, the atmosphere of the songs could be considered maybe ethereal. What do you think about that?
Well, I would agree with that. It's funny. I've gotten that exact same comment from a few people since the song came out on Friday, and I think my last single, "Afloat," would also probably fit that description. Just a little background on me. So I was born in St. Louis, and I lived there till I was 9. Moved to Tupelo for one very short year, and then moved to Jackson when I was 10. And then I was here through high school, but I moved away for college, and I was gone 15 years, mostly in the Northeast. And then I came back in 2003, so I've been back now for a while. All that to say is that while I love Jackson and I value my my upbringing and all that, from a musical standpoint, I would say that only part of what I am about would come from what you would call a Southern tradition. I'm mostly known around here for harmonica playing. So, of course, if you play harmonica, chances are you're going to play a fair amount of blues. And I've definitely played a lot of blues, more as part of, other people's bands than on my own. Although I think my music a lot of it is certainly, informed by the blues, because I think that's kind of in our DNA just living in the United States. But as far as like my own musical tastes go, I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan, for one thing. I love the Police. I'm a big Rush fan. I really like Daniel Lanois, the producer, and the work he's done with people like U2 and Bob Dylan. And a lot of that music is kind of ethereal, I guess you would say. Although there's a lot going on in it, maybe would be a better way to put it. And I've always been really attracted to that. I've always really liked music that finds a way to bridge more traditional instruments, a good old turned up electric guitar and drums and a bass. I'm drawn to that, but I'm also drawn to having other sounds that maybe aren't as commonly expected or can't be as easily fit into like one regional tradition, because it's just not really where I'm coming from. My tastes are pretty eclectic, and I think, for most people, whatever you like, that's going to inform what you end up creating, even if not trying to copy that, but it's going to have an influence on it.
I would say that is a very fair assessment of how most people operate. For instance, if you want to be a good author, if you want to write, then you read. You read a lot of great writers and a lot of great books. But you mentioned a couple of people that I'm familiar with, and that's Daniel Lanois and his work with Bob Dylan, the Neville Brothers. I think particularly with that 1989 Bob Dylan album, "Oh Mercy."
I'm a huge fan of that album. One of my favorites. Yeah. If
people have heard that, the sound that he got on that album, I'm not even sure to this day if people that are not Daniel Lanois could get exactly that sound. He was able to create an incredible track there. Man in the Long Black Coat, I think of in particular. Almost a surround sound effect just in regular stereo on that album. But when you mentioned him, it clicked. My mind immediately put two and two together and said, that's exactly, I'm definitely hearing those influences.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. You know, and again, one is not trying to copy, you know, you're trying to make your own voice, but it's inevitably going to be affected by the things that you like. And I often say when I'm talking about, you know, being interviewed or talking about music just with friends or fellow musicians, I always say that, you know, I've been doing music professionally and non-professionally for, you know, most of my life, but I am first and foremost, I'm a music fan. I mean, I you know, when I started playing in bands in the ninth grade, the cool part to me was that I'm going to get to play my little role in this act of creating the kind of music that I love. I just love music. I love bands. I love getting into the nitty gritty of how they created what they created, what their influences were. I mean, I'll never forget the day I think it was the summer after my ninth grade year. My band was rehearsing at my house on a Saturday during Live Aid, the original Live Aid. Mm-hmm. And we would, you know, play a few songs, but we would keep an eye on the TV in the other room to see who was playing. And if it was someone we liked, we would stop and watch for a little bit and we'd go back and rehearse. I mean, that day kind of encapsulated a lot for me in terms of, you know, where I feel like I'm coming from musically. You know, first and foremost, I'm a fan of these people and I'm just glad I get to make records that would even be briefly thought about, you know, as being similar to those people.
How long have you actually been making records? Have you been making recordings and putting them out there?
So my first album came out in 2007. It was called Umbrella Man. And then there was a bit of a layoff to 2015. I put out a second album called Going Somewhere. And then I put out my single Float in 2020. That was during the pandemic, and that song was heavily informed by the pandemic in terms of the writing. And then this song, Invisible, that I just released on Friday, I've actually been working on that recording for a few years now. You know, that's, you know, I'm a parent. I have 3 kids in high school right now, senior, junior, and freshman. And, you know, I'm, you know, helping to raise a family and, you know, do my part around the house and all that. And also I've worked in education as well for quite a while. You know, it gets busy, but I finally, you know, realized, you know, I'm going to make records as I can. I'm going to put songs out as I can because I love to do it. And so I'm never not working on something.
Well, I think you make some good points there. And I think this is the plight of a musician in this day and age, maybe, because if you're not somebody who is like, I'd say Taylor Swift, or somebody, you know, who like U2, somebody who's a legacy act, somebody who's connected with a record company and has that support, then you certainly, you are generally making records in a more piecemeal fashion, using local musicians, finding talent that maybe other people haven't found yet.
That's right. Yeah, the modern music business is not designed to foster creativity. It's designed to make money, and it's harder than ever to make money in the music business given the ubiquity of streaming. And I don't just mean, you know, streaming music and Spotify and all that, but just streaming in general. The options that people have for entertainment means, I think, in my, you know, it's anecdotal, but in my experience, it means a lot fewer people are going to go out at night to hear a band. Why do that when they can put on in surround sound the new Taylor Swift concert, which is fabulous, by the way. I think it's great, you know, and I'm one of those entertainment, I guess I hate to use this word, but consumers as well. You know, I often find myself staying home more often than I might otherwise because my kids are there and we can pop on the TV. Well, you magnify that across an entire country and planet, and it has huge ramifications for those of us who are, you know, trying to create and want people to come see us.
Coming up, exploring the performances of an eclectic Jackson musician. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. I'm Chris Davis, your host, and conversation and music this week with Scott Albert Johnson, Jackson area singer-songwriter. It's all focused around the release of his new single, Invisible. And here it is. And the conversation with Scott Albert Johnson continues.
I'm a little bit past the point where I'm trying to make my money or my living solely from music. Who knows what might happen down the road. But a lot of my colleagues and friends in the music business are really dependent on that gig income. And it's not a sustainable model if we want to see continuing creativity and for that creativity to get heard by enough people. It's disconcerting, but there are positives to the current era as well. I mean, I engineer my own records for the most part, with some exceptions. I can make it from start to finish. I can put it out. I have some partners that help with promotion and that kind of thing. So there are some positives to the way it is now compared to the way it was when the gatekeepers really dictated a lot more of who could even make records. But in terms of a sustainable industry that's going to have a creative renaissance like maybe we saw in the 60s, and I would argue that we saw in a lot of ways in the 80s and maybe 90s too, I don't know if we're primed for that anymore, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess I want to dive a little bit deeper into something you said and ask you, do you want to? Has it ever been maybe a personal goal of yours to make it as a singer-songwriter? Has that just been something that you've wanted to do and just don't see as a possibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me start my answer by saying that what it means to make it now has changed in general because of the changes in the business. It's also changed in terms of my own perspective on what it means to make it. So, but the more specific answer, yes, there was certainly a time for many years when I was actively trying to quote unquote make it. I was on the road a lot more. I was really thinking, I want this to be my route in life. Then you start having kids and you start, thinking about things like health insurance and education and, all that kind of stuff. And also just the stability that comes from being part of a family. And the scope of your perspective becomes wider on it. And it's definitely happened that way for me. And it just so happens that evolution that I went through happened while the music business was also evolving in very revolutionary ways, in the ways we were just talking about. So to me now, do I still want to make it? Yeah, I absolutely want to make it. But to me, making it is my songs getting heard by as many people as possible. And then hopefully people liking it and liking my music. And then whatever flows out of that, I will be very grateful for. But I'm certainly not defining it by, can I do this and only this all the time? Because what that would probably entail, if I were doing that, unless some strange miracle happened, that would probably entail me being on the road a lot. And, until my kids are in college, which is not that far away, and maybe my wife can travel with me, that's, I've got to keep all of it in perspective. And I would say I'm at a point in my life that I am totally fine with that because I'm able to make my music. I've gotten, like I said, my new song came out on Friday. I've gotten such wonderful feedback on it from so many people. My last single, Float, was played on, I think it was 75 stations around the country, including some pretty heavy hitters. So that was very gratifying. And, we'll see what happens with this one, but I'm not, I guess that I could have given a shorter answer to your question, which is that, my expectations of what music is going to give back to me in terms of a business have evolved. And I think they've evolved to a good place because now I really get to focus more on just the creative part than I was able to do for a long time. And that's where I want to be.
Coming up, the art of live performance and a special performance from Scott Albert Johnson on the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. You've got the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. And this week, you're hearing Scott Albert Johnson. What about the live performance? Because I've seen some videos of you on YouTube, and I saw you did a TV interview. And you're performing with other musicians. So do you have a band? Are you guys going around and gigging at the regular places around town?
Yeah. So, yes. I play probably around, I would say 75 gigs a year now, which is, fairly busy. I used to play anywhere from 150 to 180 gigs a year. So that was a lot busier, of course. My main person that I work with the most is Chalmers Davis. He's a piano player, and we have a duo where he plays piano and I sing and play guitar and harmonica. And, we played, even though I'm not really a blues artist, we played the Chicago Blues Festival in 2015. We played Snug Harbor down in New Orleans a few years ago. And when the situation or the event calls for a full band, I have guys that I bring in for that. That is one of the consequences of where the music business is now. Frankly, there just aren't as many gigs to go around, and the ones that are there don't pay as well as they once did, or a lot of them don't. I want to make a little money, but I'm not as dependent on it as, some of my colleagues are. I want to make sure that, it's worth their time to play with me. So in that sense, that's part of why I end up doing so many duo gigs. The business part always sticks its nose in there somewhere.
Well, there are performers who have, quote, made it, who play the economy tour constantly. I think about KT Tunstall and her loop pedals. She, every time I've seen her live, she plays by herself with loop pedals. And I think about, Warren Zevon. He did probably 80% of his career by himself.
Yeah, I do foresee that I will be doing more and more of that in the years to come. I enjoy it. I wouldn't say I enjoy it more or even maybe as much as playing with other musicians, because, part of what's so immensely gratifying about playing music is that interaction and the communication and creating something that you couldn't create by yourself. I mean, that is a wonderful thing. But on the other hand, there is a lot to be said for, kind of being the master of your own destiny and being a one-man band. And I do think that I'm going to have a lot more of that in the future.
And speaking of that one-man band live performance, this one is exclusive to the Blues and Arts Hour.
So this is a song from my first record, and it's a very special one to me. I wrote it about a year before I moved back home to where I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, with where my parents were, and from whom I had been pretty far away for about 15 years. And so it was my mom's favorite song, partly because of that, and my grandmother's too. And I don't know, it's a song about just, trying to remember the value of the people that are closest to us and dearest to us, and the places and the memories and all that. I guess it's the best way I can put it. Anyway, this is called Magnolia Road. The sweet, sweet surrender of a dark and cold December. The smell of burning firewood in the air. My friends and my relations make a bright constellation of the memories I once created there. And I'd go walking down the Magnolia Road, find the places that I used to go. And when the time comes around to take me 1,000 miles away, there I go, but here my heart will stay. There's not much explanation for this old infatuation. Well, I know there isn't much that I can do, 'cause time marches onward with dreams left undiscovered, and still this road leads me back to you. And I am walking down the Magnolia Road to learn the things that I used to know,
And though I know I'm chasing shadows through the alleys of my past, the road will take me to the things that last. Tell me that old story of the power and the glory. Tell me how to chase my fears away. Give me one good reason to make it through one more season, until the time when I come back to stay. And we'll go walking down the Magnolia Road. Hold me tight until I have to go, until the time comes round to take me 1,000 miles away. There I go, but here my heart will stay. Here my heart will stay.
I ask almost every musician that I have on this show this question, and so I want to ask you too. Do you think that there is a hunger right now in Mississippi for original music? Because I see more of that. I was out of Mississippi for several years. When I came back, there just seemed to be a glut of original musicians, people who are writing original songs and playing original songs at gigs, and it's almost like a credibility thing now, it seems, that you have to have your own original music to be able to get some of these gigs and play in restaurants and some of the clubs.
Yeah. So I guess I would, in response to that, I would say there's a lot of talent here in Mississippi. I mean, the talent level, I think, is very high for the number of people that live here, and the size city we are, and sort of compared to the sort of exposure that we have on a national level. I think the talent level is extremely high. There's so many good musicians here, so many good songwriters. And I do think there is a hunger on the part of the musicians to create that. And I do think there are some venues in town that do have a real respect for that. And those tend to be the ones that I play. On a broader level, though, I don't know if there is that hunger for that original music. I mean, you know, for every gig I play where people are really listening to my originals, and I have a lot of those, but, you know, usually I'll have one on the schedule where, you know, I'll play one of my songs, and then as soon as I'm done, they say, "Hey, can you play Brown Eyed Girl?" or something? You know, I don't know that the average person that I see at a venue, whether it's my gig or somebody else's, is necessarily primed to hear that original music. But there is a core of people who are, and I'm lucky that a lot of that core, they show up at my gigs and they listen to me, and I appreciate that.
Coming up, those two letters, A and I, and what effect they have on the singer-songwriter. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB. You're listening to the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music. I'm Chris Davis, your host. You're spending some time this week with Scott Albert Johnson, singer-songwriter. And because he's a musician who is technically adept, I had to ask about AI, artificial intelligence, and the role that it plays now in songwriting and music, and putting music together.
In this age of, you know, AI, and everyone's wondering about what AI is going to do to music, I don't think that core of creativity that comes from putting yourself out there in a song that you wrote with words that somehow either factually or metaphorically pertain to your own experience, I think that hunger is never going to go away. And I don't think AI, and I'm not a technophobe. I'm not really afraid of AI. I think it's going to be a mixed bag like every other form of technology. but I don't think that. I think we're a long way, if ever, from replacing that real creative core of songwriting with an AI written song. And so I think we might even see in the years to come that desire to hear original music go back on the upswing, because at the bottom, we are people. We like to commune with each other. We like to be able to relate to each other. We like to, hear what other people have to say about their own experience. And a song, a pop song or whatever you want to call it, is one of the best ways to do that. So I guess that's kind of a complicated answer. I think there is a lot of, in terms of original music, there's a lot to be grateful for and to be hopeful about.
You've already mentioned some of the producers and some of the singers that you've listened to, but your themes, I think, are unique ones for maybe not even just this part of the country, but also for this day and age. You're singing about space and hope at the same time, in one of the songs. And I just don't think there are a lot of people who are singing about those things.
Yeah. I definitely have my, and some other time offline, maybe we can have a whole talk about some of my interests and esoteric sort of things that I'm interested in. But yeah, I mean, it's an old cliche, but the old, what I think it was either Faulkner or Mark Twain, I can't remember who said, write what you know about. I think I would add to that, write what you think about. and a lot of those themes, I have a song called Fragments that was on my last album, which I always, and Chalmers and I, that's the one song that we actually co-wrote. And I always introduce it at shows by saying, this song is about as close as I'm ever going to come to my sort of manifesto on how I view the world and science and God or whatever, and how those things intersect. And these are things that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, quantum theory. And, I only understand it on a very basic layman's level, but it's very interesting to me, these sort of transcendent ideas. I'm also interested. I also like a really good love song, and I've tried to write a few of those. I've tried to write about how I feel about home and accomplishment, and just kind of like the journey through life, putting my own ideas out there and seeing how people respond to them, and hopefully liking those ideas. That's the primo reward for me that I get out of all of this.
Scott Albert Johnson's pandemic-era song, Float, which got airplay on 75 radio stations across the country.
Stranger times I have not seen. Think you know just what I mean. Something's missing from this present day. Someone's taking everything away. I can't seem to tell a friend from foe. Not so sure that I really want to know what's coming around the corner. Tell me please, help me fly away from this disease. And then I float above it all the evil, big and small. I float towards the light and sail right out of the night. Now here I am, a million miles away. How I got here, I couldn't say. No fear, no hate to throttle my affection. No plague to give my soul infection. No lies to tell me what is real. No conspiracies to teach me what to feel. Nothing here to make me give a damn. Nobody to remind me who I am.
Are you into physical sales at all? Are you having CDs made, vinyl pressed?
Boy, that is a great question. I am not doing CDs at this time because I just, I don't. Well, we actually do own a CD player. We just found an old DVD player that'll play CDs, but we don't have CD players in our cars. Most of my people I know don't. As for vinyl, I haven't done that yet, but I expect that I will do it at some point. I've certainly gotten very into vinyl myself in the last few years as a listener. I used to be one of those skeptics, like, no, come on, man. The CDs are better. Digital music is, it's clearer, it's free of scratches and all that. I've kind of revised my opinion on that once I had a decent turntable and a decent way to listen to it. Okay, now I get it. I see the difference. And so at some point, I do think I will be releasing some vinyl, but making the numbers work out on vinyl is part of the challenge. But I'm thinking that my next EP or full album, which I hopefully will have at some point in the next few years, I would probably try to do a vinyl component of that. I don't know about CDs because I don't think that I don't see the CD listenership increasing in the next few years. So.
Where can people find you? Where can they get a hold of you? Where can they hear you? How do they get you on the socials and all of that?
So I'm on most of the social media, although I'm only kind of learning how to do TikTok, so I don't have as much of a TikTok presence yet. And I'm on X or Twitter or whatever they're calling it now, but not super active on it. The social media I use the most by far would be Facebook and Instagram, and I'm very easily found there. I have a website, which is scottalbertjohnsonmusic.com, and I can be reached any of those places, but probably Facebook or Instagram is probably the easiest way to find me. And then my music is on all the streaming services.
Scott Albert Johnson on the Blues and Arts Hour on 103.9 WYAB, brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi and Small Town Music every Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Be sure to tune in next week. I'm Chris Davis.